Government here in Maine gets its money from three main sources: the state income tax, the sales tax, local property taxes. Among those, where should our tax relief efforts be targeted, Pat McGowan?
Well, I think I mentioned some of them earlier when we talked about lowering the top rates on the income tax and reducing the overall tax burden to Maine people. And that's critical on where we get the money from. As I said to you earlier, I've been involved in collecting taxes as a small business owner for 2 decades. And oftentimes you look at where the revenues came from. We collected money from gasoline sales. We collected money from sales tax. We collected money from different fees for licenses and such and sent them forward to the state of Maine. We can relieve the tax burden in the state of Maine, we can relieve the tax burden by supporting things that make Maine grow. We've laid out plans that we support MPRP, $1.5 billion, 2,200 jobs, 90% paid for by non-residents. LNG plants, 1,000 jobs in construction, putting people back to work there. We've talked about building new roads and new bridges and investing in an infrastructure that has a bridge age that's 61 years old. There are many things that we can do, but I go back to the idea of making government work for people. There was a great president we had that stopped in Bangor, landed at Dow Field, and went up to the University of Maine and gave a great speech. His name was John Kennedy, and he said that a rising tide carries all boats. We invest, we build, we grow, we relieve the tax burden on Maine people.
Rosa Scarcelli.
We have to focus on the tax relief that will help businesses grow. There's no doubt. We need a bigger economic pie. We need abundance, and we can't keep squeezing out of business, because if we squeeze out of business, then our economic engine dies. So we have to focus on that. We need to focus on the estate tax. We need to focus on capital gains, and we need to focus on making sure that some of the equipment taxes and other taxes that are incentivizing business growth are in place because they're effective and they work. But one thing that we have to remember is that we also have to make investments. We have to be cautious where we cut. The constituency of the future is far less outspoken and vocal than the constituency of today, and we need to place our bets in the future. And one way to do that is to invest in R&D. We're a quarter of what New England spends, a quarter of the nation spends right now on research and development. We're way behind. And if we aren't finding the resources to make those investments so that industry can grow, then we're going to have a smaller and ever-shrinking economic pie. We need to focus on growth.
Steve Rowe.
The objects of government, as found in our Constitution, are to promote justice, protect the common welfare, and to educate people. There are others, but those are the key ones. We have to do that. I'm not going to apologize for having taxes. We as a society need a government, and it needs to do certain things. Educate people, protect those who can't protect themselves. The key is taxes the real problem? Yeah, for some people it is, but again, I'm sounding like a broken record, but education, healthcare costs, energy costs, and our infrastructure. We do need to reduce the property tax. It is a burden. It is one of the most regressive taxes, and in many of our cities, we're seeing the mill rate go up above 25 mills now, and we're seeing housing values go up, and people are having to sell their homes or they're having to move. We have to sort of de-incentivize sprawl. We have to keep people in our service centers and move people back. So I think it's important that we focus on property tax relief. It's key to allowing homeowners to keep their homes and live in communities. The sales tax, the income tax again, I applaud the legislature and the governor. We're bringing that down, hopefully, if you vote no on one, to 6.5%. That will help attract capital, and it will allow us to pay lower income taxes. We'll be more competitive with the rest of the country. So I would advocate, if we're going to, any taxes that deserve relief is the property tax and the income tax.
Libby Mitchell.
In Maine, we've tried to keep a balance between those three methods of raising money for the things that we all value as Maine citizens, for the health care, for our elderly, for the schools, and for business growth. Our income tax had gotten progressively out of line because we have to be competitive with our neighboring states. That's the reason for the tax reform, to balance the income tax, to get it down so that we're competitive with our neighbors, and to expand the sales tax base to things that were not taxed in the past to pay for that. We also chose to export some of our taxes to the people who come to visit us through the meals and lodging taxes. That's because we work so very, very hard to keep Maine pristine clean and pure and attractive to tourists, and perhaps they could help us pay for that a bit, and where they could share the burden for that. But equally important, it's the balance that we look at and why we make those changes. For the property tax, long ago, we put in place the homestead exemption to make sure that Maine homeowners were rewarded for staying in their homes and could stay there. But a more targeted, the circuit breaker, which is targeted to your income to help you with the property tax burden. And that's why, as a select woman, believe me, for 9 years, I lived up close and personal with people in the city, in my town, who were concerned about property taxes. But it has to be a balance. We have to make sure that we have just enough to make sure that our state is doing the job that it needs to do. But it's awfully important to recognize that they pay for things that we as a community believe valuable, and we have to make sure that they're assessed fairly.